Father of 18-year-old murder victim attacks serial killer in courtroom. Enter the center of a suspenseful courtroom drama, where justice is at stake and emotions are running high. In a startling turn of events, the physical encounter between the grieving father and the serial killer who destroyed his family's existence is the result of his raw agony. What motivated this last-ditch attempt of rebellion against unfathomable loss? How may the depths of human feeling and the pursuit of justice collide? Come us as we explore the depths of grief, wrath, and the never-ending need for closure following unfathomable catastrophe. As we peel back the layers of this engrossing tale, will justice win out? Or will the unbridled force of human passion change how this legal battle plays out? A heartbroken father faced the serial killer who killed his daughter, breaking the eerie silence in a courtroom that is usually a haven of sobriety and order. The intense stress and suffering that permeated the space highlighted the serious effects that violent crime has on communities and families. This intense moment is a powerful reminder of the human cost of needless violence, as well as the difficulties in dealing with bereavement and the legal system. The courtroom drama explores the depths of human emotion, as well as the never-ending search for justice and closure in the face of unfathomable catastrophe. The father who was suffering released all of his pent-up anguish, rage, and fury during his emotional outburst in the courtroom. The weight of his daughter's premature death and the subsequent legal proceedings weighed heavily on him when he faced the offender, creating an uncontrollably intense wave of emotion. The enormity of his sorrow, along with the knowledge of the horrible deed done to his loved one, set off a flurry of intense feelings that burst into a potent act of resistance. The courtroom turned into a boiling pot of human emotion at that point, with the distinction between anger and grief becoming hazy in the face of unfathomable tragedy. The father and the serial killer's clash sent shockwaves through the courtroom, frightening both the assembled legal professionals and onlookers. The seriousness of the situation was highlighted by the tight environment crackling with palpable anxiety as security personnel hurried to intervene and restore order. This outburst exposed the relatives of victims' genuine agony and anguish following needless loss, serving as a sobering reminder of the enormous impact violent crime has on both individuals and society. In a visceral and unrelenting exhibition of emotion, the complexity of loss and the pursuit of justice met in this moment of unadulterated humanity. The emotional eruption produced commotion and disruption, but it also spurred meaningful discussions and observations about the human cost of violent crime, the complexity of mourning, and the administration of justice. Both legal experts and onlookers were moved by the episode, which made them reflect on the limits of courtroom etiquette and the effectiveness of the justice system in meeting the demands of the victims' families. It highlighted the significant effects of violent crime on people and communities, as well as the ongoing fight for justice and healing in its wake, serving as a somber reminder of the never-ending search for closure and accountability in the wake of tragedy. The courtroom's emotional eruption had an instantaneous and significant effect on the dynamics of the legal proceedings. The abrupt interruption sent tremors through the assembled legal professionals and spectators, shattering the decorum and seriousness usually associated with courtroom procedures. Security staff hurried to intervene and restore order after the grieving father and the serial killer got into a physical altercation, highlighting the seriousness of the issue and the depth of the emotions involved. The incident also brought up issues regarding the bounds of etiquette in the courtroom and the difficulties in striking a careful balance between justice and grief in the interest of bringing the case to a close. In addition, the emotional outburst prompted more extensive conversations and introspection, both inside and outside of the legal community. These included questions about the effectiveness of the legal system in meeting the needs of the families of the victims and the difficulties in balancing the emotions of grief with the concepts of justice and due process. It was a moving reminder of the severe effects that violent crime has on victims and communities, emphasizing the continuous fight for justice, closure, and healing after a disaster. The occurrence created a cloud over the courtroom during the ongoing legal processes, which prompted a closer look at the difficulties associated with grieving and seeking justice after suffering an unimaginable loss. The emotional outburst in the courtroom caused people to think deeply about how justice and grief interact, as well as the challenges of navigating the legal system in the wake of brutal crime. The bereaved father's unvarnished emotional outburst exposed the extent of the victim's suffering and the heavy cost of death, underscoring the long-lasting damage caused by senseless acts of violence. The tragedy also brought up significant issues regarding the effectiveness of the legal system in meeting the emotional needs of the relatives of the victims and the difficulties in striking a balance between the pursuit of justice and the intense feelings of grief and rage. The constant battle for accountability and closure in the wake of tragedy was further highlighted by the encounter between the grieving father and the serial killer. The experience provided a stark reminder of the human cost of violent crime and the difficulties involved in navigating the legal system while coping with intense feelings of loss and sadness. The incident spurred wider discussions regarding the need for empathy, compassion, and understanding in order to support the families of the victims and make sure that justice is carried out in a way that respects their emotional well-being, even as legal processes proceeded. The community's reactions to the emotional outpouring in the courtroom were diverse, and they sparked thoughtful discussions about the nature of grief, justice, and the role of the legal system in meeting the needs of the families of the victims. A great number of people expressed their profound empathy for the bereaved parent, expressing solidarity with his pain and annoyance at such an unbelievable loss. His passionate outburst was seen by them as a potent illustration of the human cost of violent crime and its lasting effects on those left behind. The incident did, however, also draw criticism and worries from some areas, with some questioning if using violence to further the cause of justice is ever right. The bounds of civility in the courtroom and the possible effects of such emotional outbursts on the integrity of the legal process were discussed. While understandable, some contended that such emotional outbursts could jeopardize the impartiality of court procedures and the pursuit of justice. However, the community's response also acted as a spark for more extensive discussions about the difficulties of navigating the judicial system. It led to demands for more resources and assistance for the families of the victims, such as access to mental health and counseling services, to help them deal with their loss and work through the difficulties of the judicial system. It also emphasized how critical it is to cultivate compassion, empathy, and understanding within the judicial system in order to guarantee that victims' demands are met with respect and dignity. In the end, the reaction of the community to the emotional breakdown in the courtroom brought to light the necessity of continual communication and cooperation in order to assist the families of the victims and guarantee that justice is carried out in a way that respects the principles of compassion, empathy, and justice. The courtroom's emotional outburst was a potent reminder of the severe effects that violent crime has on people as individuals, as families, and as communities. The victim's father's unvarnished expression of grief and suffering exposed the profound psychological wounds caused by senseless acts of violence, emphasizing the trauma and ongoing suffering endured by those left behind. Important discussions and introspection regarding the difficulties of grieving, the pursuit of justice, and the function of the legal system in meeting the needs of the victims' families were sparked by the occurrence. It acted as a call to action for the families of the victims to receive more assistance and resources, such as access to mental health and counseling services, to help them deal with their loss and work through the difficulties of the legal system. While the legal process proceeded, the tragedy spurred more general conversations on the need for systemic changes to better meet the emotional needs of the families of the victims and guarantee that justice is administered in a way that upholds their humanity and dignity. In the end, the emotional outburst in the courtroom highlighted the continuous difficulties and complexities of negotiating the aftermath of horrific crime and prompted a closer look at the relationship between grief and justice. It is critical that we unite as a community in the wake of this horrific event in order to support the families of the victims, defend the principles of empathy and compassion, and work toward a future in which justice is administered fairly and with dignity to everyone. Don't miss out on the latest updates in this gripping courtroom drama. Subscribe now for exclusive content and insights into the complexities of grief, justice, and resilience in the face of tragedy.